get into the big one, which is injuries, and of course the one that we've got to start with is JURRIEN Timber. So, Glenn, according to a few sources, JURRIEN Timber could actually make an early return. We could have him in January, but then probably those are the earlier stages. We could have him in the later stages of the UEFA Champions League, and he could also be involved with the later parts of the Premier League title. How much of a boost would JURRIEN Timber be if he comes back January, February?
Oh, huge boost. Like like the day we got the news that Timber was injured,
Yeah,
you know, I was crying. I actually shed a tear. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm actually crying. Football is making me cry.
I know,
Players are
I know.
getting injured and I'm crying because he had been so good. That Community Shield game
Absolutely.
against Man City and that first half against Nottingham, he was so good. We signed him. He was supposed to play as a center back and as a right back. He was
Yeah.
playing as a left back, and you wouldn't even have noticed. Like someone would have told you, like he had been signed as a left back.
As a
I
left
think it
back, yeah,
was
and you wouldn't even argue.
yeah, I don't know who was playing on that side. I don't know if Myers had left by then. There's someone who played in the Community Shield. I don't know if it was Alvarez or someone playing on that right side. He dealt with them so well in that
Oh,
Community Shield game. Absolutely fantastic. And that is one of the main reasons why we were like able to get that game to 1-1 and draw that game. Against Nottingham as well, in the first half, we looked so comfortable. Timbo's so good on the ball.
yeah.
He looks very comfortable in terms of passing. And imagine a defense. So you have, I know Zinchenko is very good going forward and all that. Tomiyasu is good. Like, imagine having a defense there, like when you're trying to protect a lead and you have Ben White, Timber, Gabriel, Saliba, and Tomiyasu. Like, no one is going to get past that. And
Yeah, it's like a replica of having of what Manchester City have at the moment.
mm,
Gvardiol, Diaz, Kyle Walker, Stones, and then Nathan Ake.
yeah, and Akanji as well. So
And Akanji
like
as well, yeah.
having center backs who can also play as fullbacks, like we do, like Ben White and Timber as well. Absolutely fantastic. So Timber, I definitely miss him. Right now, obviously, we've still not. Okay, I actually missed him, but I mean, we've not really been in a situation where you're like, okay, if Timber's here, or this and that. But yes, it would have been absolutely fantastic if he was there. But we still have Gabriel, we still have Saliba, we still have Ben White, we still have Zinchenko who are playing really well. But the truth is, we are still short in that position. Like we only have 6 defenders. If you want to count
Yeah.
Cedric, it's 7 defenders. So usually people have 8, like
I,
left
w-
back,
I wouldn't
back.
really count Cedric for now.
Okay, so 6 defenders. So
Yeah.
you have a left back, and you usually have a left back and a backup, a right back and a backup, all that. So right now we only have 6 defenders. We have the main ones, the main 4, and then we have 2 others who can play several positions. Tomiyasu can play across all 4 positions, and Kivio can play across all 4 positions. So usually with Pep Guardiola usually doesn't like having a team of 30 players. He usually prefers, like I had someone saying, like a Man City fan, Guardiola prefers like having 20 players in his team.
Yeah.
Like he's
Yeah.
going to use this one, you're going to rotate here and there. So right now it looks like we're going to take that approach. You're not going to have a player and a player and a backup in every single position. Like Ateta wants to use like 20 players like throughout the season. So if Zinchenko needs a rest, Tomiyasu can play there. If Ben White needs a rest, Tomiyasu can play there. If it's Saliba needs a rest, you can play Kivio there. We saw him playing with Gabriel together last season. If it's Gabriel who needs a rest, Kivio can play there, or you can have Saliba and Ben White as centre back. So
Yeah.
you can rotate the whole back 6. You have like 5 players who can play multiple positions. So Timber definitely is missed, but getting him in that latter part of the season, it would be
It's
great
much better.
because last season I felt like many of our players were tired by the time it got to March.
Yeah.
Man City in September, they might not even play De Bruyne the whole of September, and then he
Yeah.
played in October, November. By the time you get to February, De Bruyne is fresh.
Well,
You find Akanji is fresh, Walker is fresh. They've only played
yeah.
like 15 games.
Well,
But
let,
for
let me tell you.
Arsenal,
Let me tell you something very interesting. Last season, Manuel Akanji is the only centre back for Man City to have played 16 games in the Premier League.
mm,
The rest of them played less than 16. That is how that is how good this guy is good at rotation.
exactly. So for us, by the time we get to that point, since we don't have Timber, I think Saliba will have missed maybe one.
Yeah.
Gabriel, obviously, if you don't count the first 4 games, he'll play in every single game. So by the time you get
Yeah.
to March, a lot of the players would have played a lot of games. So another benefit is, I think Tomiyasu is going for the Asian Cup in January.
Mm,
So he's going to be if Tomiyasu is not there, it becomes a problem. That is,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
know the most important players are players like Saliba and Rice, but I think Tomiyasu as well has to be there because it's like a rotation option. We need to
Yeah.
defend. Tomiyasu is there. If you need the right back, Tomiyasu is there. If you need the left back, maybe even goalkeeper, Tomiyasu is there. Like he can play in every single position. And we saw the other day, like this days Tomiyasu is even playing as an inverted midfielder, an inverted striker. Like I saw him going like to the striker position the other day and basically helping us create that chance. Absolutely fantastic. But if Timber is there, because Tomiyasu is going in January, I think he helps us a lot because he's another player who can play in a lot of different positions. He had settled in perfectly in the Arsenal team. Like by the time we got to August, people were saying Timber has been better than Rice in terms of
Mm,
signing. So if imagine right now if Timber was there and he's better than Rice, that means we have an absolute gem of a defender. So that allows us to rotate between Zinchenko and Timber and maybe use Tomiyasu on the right back position more and all that. So I think Timber would be a huge return
yeah. Listen, what I
for us.
think
Hopefully,
is,
gets back during that period because
yeah, what I think is um it was kind of a blow to Mikel Arteta, and maybe it's one of the reasons why we have not had that fluidity and that fluency that we're asking for as fans. The good football, the reason maybe us are not clicking yet is because we have introduced a new system, and Mikel tried to introduce a new system this campaign. And that system depended on players like Timber, Rice, and the new roles he created and the new positions. So when Timber gets injured, it means that you've got to find a player who can give you what Timber gives you, or you have to revert to what we played last campaign. And for me, it looks like now of a hybrid, more of a hybrid. What we had the last campaign and what we did when Timber was around, right?
yeah,
It feels like more of a hybrid. So if he comes back, I think Arsenal will eventually. I don't know whether Mikel will stick with what he's playing now, or will he will now graduate to what he wanted to play with Timber and Rice. But I think we'll play much better football, and it will allow us attack better. Because what he wants, Mikel, is to have that defensive unit strong. He wants to have that assurance that the team is defending well. It has the ability to defend well, and after that, then you can concentrate on going and getting the goals, knowing that even if you do not score, or even if you score one, you can actually win the game. So I think he's a very important player. And also, I mean, it depends on the ambitions of the club. Where do we want to be in terms of the Champions League, and where do we want to be in terms of the Premier League? If Arsenal want to go semi-finals, Champions League, um, title challenges, Premier League, he's going to be vital. He's going to be vital because there are those games you play, quarterfinals of the Champions League, hard games to win. Even if you're playing Milan, even if you're playing, if I think even if you played Copenhagen on the semi-finals of the Champions League, it would be a hard game.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I think that is when it comes in, and like you rightly also put it, it was that drop off in terms of uh, fitness, in terms of ability, in terms of the tired legs, the lack of concentration that actually beat us. And if you could just swap players, if you could swap out Rob Holding last season and put in Jalen Timber, it's a different game. It's a different team. If you could swap out
yeah,
Partey
yeah,
in those games where he didn't play well and you put in Declan Rice, it's a different team and it's a different game. So look, I agree with you. I really think Timber is gonna be like a new addition when he comes back, and I'm also quite surprised that he's going to be coming back a little bit earlier than expected. But probably that is the advantage, right? That is
yeah,
really the advantage. Um, we might not get affected earlier on. Okay, we're gonna talk about those injuries that have come, but we might not get affected a lot. But later, when these players have been hit with injuries, when some of their minds are focused now on the Euros, um, that is when we will be affected. That is when we'll actually feel the pressure. But let's talk about the general injury crisis actually that we have been through, overcome, and been through again. What do you think is the problem? Why do you think we are picking up these injuries that we didn't have last campaign? Because Gabriel Martinelli for the whole of last campaign literally was all right. Saka was all right. Odegaard was all right. It was Alexander Zinchenko who was, in and out of the sick bay. Do you think it's too much minutes? Do you think it's the lack of rotation? Do you think it was the World Cup? Or do you just have a question for the medical team?
No, I don't have a question for the medical team. I think it's a lot of games. Those players that we are that's getting injuries, the likes of Saka and Martinelli, they've played so many games. These days, Martinelli plays for Brazil as well. Saka plays every single game for
Yeah,
Arsenal, every single game for
for
England, even if it
England.
doesn't matter. Declan Rice as well plays every single game for England as well. So like he came to Arsenal, he has an injury all of a sudden. Thankfully, didn't keep him out for too long. So I think it's just the volume of games they are playing, too many. Because if you look at the players that don't play a lot of games, like Ben White, he doesn't go for the international games, like he's always fit.
Yeah,
Touch wood, hopefully, he's always fit. Like the players that don't play a lot of games, like in terms of their countries and everything, they are usually fit, like the likes of Ben White, as I've mentioned. So I think it's the volume of games. That is why we need to use every single player in the squad. Now, that is why I don't agree with people saying sell Fabio Vieira, sell Havertz, sell Nketiah. It doesn't matter. No, they're going to help us this season. Saka is
yeah,
not going to
yeah.
play every single game. There is games where if Jesus is not there, will Jesus be fit for the whole season? If Jesus and Odegaard are not there, then the players that you're like, yeah, get rid of them, they're going to have to come and play. And if we've killed their confidence completely and we think they're terrible and they're useless and all that, they're not going to help us. So those players are going to play a key role. Every single player is going to play a key role already this season, whether people like it or not. Havertz he helped us the other day. He got an assist. He got an assist against Man City. He's one of the
Yeah,
reasons why he won that game.
yeah,
Nketiah, it's not like, yes, I know he missed chances against Crystal Palace and everything, but against Crystal Palace, we won that game because Nketiah made a good run and he got a penalty. He
and a
scored
penalty.
against Nottingham.
He's
So
won two. Has he won two or three this season?
he's won two penalties against
Two
Bournemouth as
penalties
well.
already. Yeah,
So everyone is going to play a role. Even if I know Nketiah is not Osimhen, I know he's not Tony, I know Havertz is potentially at the moment is not worth 65 million and all that. I know that. But I'm saying in terms of helping us, even if it means 15 minutes coming on and play a role in the Champions League or maybe in the Carabao Cup, everyone is going to help us. So at the moment, they are Arsenal players. When you get to the transfers, if you don't want them, then we can talk about that at that moment.
yeah,
But as of now, all of them are like Arsenal players. So we can't just depend on Jesus to play every single game. Nketiah is going to play. We can't depend on Havertz or Odegaard to play every single game. Fabio is going to come on. Smith Rowe, I'm not right. Smith Rowe is going to get his minutes as well. He's going to play a lot of minutes. And defensively, everyone is going to be used. So for me, I'm okay. Like in terms of, for your question, in terms of injuries, I think it's because of the volume of games. So everyone is
yeah.
going to be needed.
Yeah, I've also said that when you have a World Cup mid-season, and then there is no time for players to get that enough rest, so they come from the World Cup, they straight away run back to the Premier League, and now preseason, and now they have the Euros as well. In this summer, it means many of them are not going to rest, and now the Champions League is going to be expanded, and now the Premier League games have been expanded. There's no way you're going to do away with injuries. And many people said, well, Cossy, look, so many players have played in the World Cup and they didn't get injured. And I told them it's just a matter of time. And I won't be surprised that we might see shorter careers due to injuries with all this new version of the World Cup, World Cup, for clubs, World Cup, and then new version of the Champions League, new version of this, new version of that. I wouldn't be surprised to see as many injuries in football and players like retiring early due to injuries. But so there is a story, and this one is, I think, 1 day old. Trossard has pulled his hamstring and is pulled out of the Belgian national team. Saka has pulled out of the England national team. We don't know the problem with Saka yet because again, Mikel says it's a question for the medical team, but there's no way we are getting information from the medical team until they publish on the website. And then Saliba is also pulled out of the French games due to a toe injury. Which one of them is most scary, and which one would you think is irreplaceable? Saka, Trossard, Saliba.
I think in terms of irreplaceable, it's Saliba. But I
Uh,
think the one that worries me is Trossard, because I think Saliba is not that serious.
yeah, yeah,
Listen, it's great to play for your country. It's a great honor. But we always see it with all these other teams. International break comes up, Rashford is out. Shaw is not available. or Sterling is not there, James is not available. And after the international break, they played the Premier League game.
Yeah,
So we also have to do that with our players. Listen, Saliba has not been fit for a long time. Don't go for the international team. Wait for Arsenal because we have so many important games coming up. Listen, Gareth Southgate, Rashford, Sterling, they are all better than Saka. You don't need to pick Saka.
absolutely.
Play them for England. Saka is not good enough for England. Let him stay at Arsenal. He doesn't have to play for England. Play Rashford. Rashford is better. Play him. You don't have to play Saka. So let our players rest. I'm happy. Like whenever Ben White doesn't go, I'm like, yeah, Ben White is
Yeah,
fit for resting for 2 weeks. Saka is fit and all that. So Saliba, in terms of how important Saliba is, obviously a worry. We've seen you can win games without Saka, and we can play Jesus there, we can play Nelson there, and all that. But in terms of defensively, Saliba has to be there, as you've mentioned, quoting Gary Neville, he has to be there for us to win. There's no problem with resting him 1 game, 2 games, like against Sheffield United. No disrespect to them, but after Chelsea, we have West Ham in the we have Sevilla in the Champions League, and then we'll have Sheffield and then West Ham in the Carabao Cup. Like that game against Sheffield, you can be like, listen, Sheffield are not going to attack you that much. Yes, they can put in those crosses and everything, but listen, Kivio, Gabriel, play this one. Let
yeah,
Saliba rest. Maybe Zinchenko rest. Then maybe even play the Carabao Cup. We also want to win that one. So there's a way you can rotate. Now, the one that I'm worried about is Trossard. Because this is like his 3rd injury or 4th injury already the last 2 months. And
yeah,
I'm one of those scared. If I was a manager, I'm one of those scared managers. Like if you are 2 goals up, take off Partey, take off Martinelli, take off Trossard because of their injury record. I'm usually
yeah,
worried about. Trossard, there's a lot of times, even last season, there's a lot of times Trossard was subbed off because he has a knock, or he has, even during preseason, I think there's a game you're subbed off because he has a knock.
mm,
So you have to manage Trossard's minutes. I mean, there's like 5 players in our team, unfortunately, that you have to manage their minutes. Zinchenko, now Saka's joined up on that list. Saliba is there. Partey is
Jesus.
there. Jesus is there. The only players who can play every single game without being wide are like Ben White, maybe Gabriel, maybe Declan Rice, or Odegaard, Havertz. Those ones can play every single game without being wide. But there's like 5 or 6 players where you need to manage their minutes. So Trossard is the one I'm worried about because already this one is like the 3rd injury. So hopefully it's not that serious. Hopefully it's a way of keeping him out of the international games. But if we come back and Trossard is not available, then there's a slight ride because some games, like we saw against PSV and against Everton, he is very good. Like he can help
Yeah,
us win the game.
yeah,
So we have to manage his minutes. Now that Martinelli is back, we have other options. Nelson can play there, Smith can play there. Just manage their minutes. This one plays for 1 half, this one comes on the next game, this one starts, the other one comes off. We just need to manage their minutes better. Don't play everyone for like 10 games in a row. No.
yeah, absolutely. Right, guys. Talk to me in the comment box below. Do you think injuries will fumble our chances to win the title? It's a big question. For the comments, do you think injuries will fumble our chances to win the title? Man City are a team that rarely pick up major injuries, and it comes from the rotation of the manager and managing of minutes. Like I said, Manuel Akanjila's campaign played 16 games in the Premier League. He was the player at centre back and in defense who played the most number of games for Man City, who appeared in the most number of games for Man City. So rotation and management, it is actually it's actually very key. Mr. Marty
As
says injuries are
Yeah,
always part of it. Yeah,
I was going to talk about that one
yeah,
because it is true.
yeah,
Chelsea have a lot of injuries.
yeah,
Nkunku is
absolutely.
injured. Chukwuemeka was injured. James is injured. Chilwell, Man United, a lot of their defenders are injured. Man City as well. They never get injuries, but even now, De Bruyne is injured. Stones has been injured, and I think De Bruyne is out until like December. That is like
Yeah,
5 months out. So yes, injuries are always part of the game. That is true. So it's just about how to deal with it. But if you can deal with it, if you've won a game and you don't need to play in that particular game, players like Saliba don't have to play every single game because those ones have to be fit until like the end of the season. So we just have to deal with it. Hopefully, our bench helps us.
yeah. Just the last one is say yes or no. Do you think we are in an injury crisis?
No.
No, absolutely. So Glenn says we're not in an injury crisis, and let's get to January. Let's talk about that period where it is crazy and everyone thinks that the club will splash a lot of cash just to end up splashing 5 million, 6 million, at times even less than that. But Glenn, first and foremost, before we get into, you've seen the comments already. People want Osimhen in January. People want Ivan Toney in January. We're gonna talk about that. Thank you so much, Femi, for opening up this segment. How important is this coming January transfer window to the end of the season for Arsenal? How do you think it will be?
Very important. Now, January transfer windows have never been that big for us.
Yeah,
I remember 2018, maybe we bought Aubameyang and Mkhitaryan. Aubameyang was a big buy. Last time we bought Trossard, and that was like a backup, second option, plan B kind of signing. But if you take a look at the other Januaries, you find us January where we signed Cedric and Pablo Mari. You'll find us as January where we signed Karlstrom. You'll find a
yeah,
January where we didn't do anything. So usually
yeah.
sign like
There's a
even
January where we brought in, was it Dennis Suarez?
Dennis Suarez. He never
Yeah.
played any game. So you've had
Is he one
some
of the worst
terrible January
signings we
transfer.
have ever had in this club?
He not even one of the worst. Yeah, worst. He only played
Yeah.
like one game, so definitely worst signing. So there's a lot of January windows we've not done anything. But this time I feel like it's definitely going to be important, because if it gets to that January and you buy a player like a lot of teams have been looking for, and you make a statement signing, that will be big. Anyone, Osimhen, Tony. Now Neto is good, but Neto gets a lot of injuries. That is my worry.
Yeah.
You know, Neto's been injured for the last like 3 years. So unless he's 100% fit as a backup, that would be great. But if he gets a statement signing, I want a midfield. If he can get a midfield and a striker, that would be good. Like two signings, at least that would be big for us. So again, it depends. Cause another thing, I think AFCON is in January. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
in January or the.
AFCON is in January.
Wow. So Party is going to go.
Mm.
El Neni is going to go. Tomias is going to go for the Asian Cup. So right away, you're going to lose 3 players. So right away, we are going to need a midfielder there. So in either way, even if Partey was there, I still needed a midfielder. So you're going to need a midfielder there, and hopefully you can get a forward player. For me personally, I still feel like the kind of striker I'm looking for maybe two different kind of strikers.
Mm.
Sign one, but two kind of there's a word I'm looking for, it has disappeared. But either striker, like as I've always said, a striker like a Giroud, a tall striker where if it's in the last minute, we can put in those crosses. Sometimes we put in so many crosses, and Jesus and Saka are not really those players who can jump for headers. If you can get a striker like that, you can bring off the bench, that would be good. Or a striker who can also play like on the wings, like players like uh, even Colomwani, I think, is played forward and plays on the wing. Even Thuram at Inter Milan, he can play forward. He can
Yeah,
play as a 10.
yeah,
He can play on the left side. Players like that. If you get like an Osimhen, that is fine. I want two players in January. I think it's very, very key, because I think Man City will buy a player or two in January, and maybe Tottenham will strengthen as well. Maybe Liverpool strengthen as well. Now, where I don't agree is you can say that without saying I don't think Jesus can score you 10 goals in a season. No, he can't. He was injured for 4 months last season and he still scored 11 goals. I'm
yeah,
sure he'd have gotten 16 or 17. And the kind of striker that we have in Jesus, he does so much for our team.
yeah. So much for
And
the
we don't always play him as a center forward anyway. Sometimes he comes to the number 10 position. Sometimes he plays on the right side. So he's not going to score that many goals. But it will be good to add to Jesus and Ketty just to have a different option for sure. But I need a midfield as well, because Party is going in January for the African Cup.
Okay, so with the options, I think we have a couple of positions and we have a couple of options. We are not short of options. Let's start off with that midfield position, like you've said. We've looked at Quintem Timber in midfield, and Quintem Timber is not a player that most of us have actually heard about or researched about. But what I would say is he plays more as a DM CM, not attacking midfielder, DM CM. So Rice, Lokonga, Partey. That is Quintem Timber. Would you prefer a player like Quintem? He's 22 at the moment, so younger than Declan Rice, doesn't bring in that kind of experience, comes in just to fight for his position, raw, has the legs, and very, very fresh. Or would you prefer, like what we did last January, a player like Jorginho, a player with that experience, a bit of pedigree, someone who can actually mix it up. Like if we went and brought in a player um like like Douglas Lewis. Now Douglas Lewis, not that old guy, but he's so experienced. Like you would have signed experience at a very young age, just like we did with Declan Rice. What do you prefer? Experience, pedigree to see us through the season, or young one for the future, young one for the project.
For that January one, I think for the future one, I usually prefer it in the summer. But
Mm.
for January, when it's crucial time, I prefer having like experience someone like a Douglas Luiz, as you mentioned. Now, I do follow Quinton Timber because I play Champions League fantasy, and
Oh,
he is in my team. He is in
Okay.
my team, and I watched the final game, like looking at how he played, not because he was going to join us, but because I had him in my team. So I was watching and I was like, yeah, this guy gets a lot of interceptions as well, just like Declan Rice in midfield. I think he scored maybe a goal and an assist this season, so he is good. It would be good. Like imagine having two twins in the team, like a Raphael and Fabi at Man United. Like maybe sub one off and bring on the other without the
Yeah, you
referee
bring on the
noticing.
other. Yeah.
You can just without the referee noticing. So it should be good. But I would prefer for January transfer window when it's business time. That time you could be in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup. The
Yeah.
FA Cup is just getting started. You could be awaiting, or you would know which team you're going to play in the last 16 of the Champions League. So Premier League, you could be first, you could be second, you could be battling it out. So you need veterans, as Moji says. You need veterans for that January transfer window. Players like
Mm.
Quentin Timber and players for the future, players who get linked from Brazil and all that. Summer transfer window where you like test them for 2 months during the preseason. But January, it's not time for testing. January, you're coming to play. Party is not there. Tomias is not there. You're coming to play, and maybe you have a couple of injuries. You need to play. So I think more experience. Someone like Douglas Luiz, as you say. If there's one player that
Well, Glenn has, signed off for a little bit. I think his internet is lacking a little bit, but of course, we'll get to him when he comes back. We're still discussing what do we need in January as a club. What do Arsenal need in January? We've talked about Quinton Timber, the midfield. I mean, Glenn raises a big point in the midfield because again, you don't have Partey, you don't have Mohamed El Neni, and we might not have Takara Tomias as well. He might be leaving for the Asian Games, and that means that in the end Arsenal will be left with a whole gap, like a big gap. So Quinton Timber, which players do you think Arsenal should be looking at in January? But personally, I wanted to talk about the two players, Pedro Neto and Ivan Toney. We've talked about Ivan Toney before, and I think it's one of the players that we will see on the market in January. He's one of the players that we will definitely see on the market in January. He is good. He's going to be available. He's going to be back. Should we spend 80 million on Ivan Toney, right? So Glenn is back. Let's get into the Ivan Toney debate straight away. Glenn, welcome back. I was talking about Tony and the demands. 80 million is what Brentford are asking for. If we cannot get a midfielder, of course, again, our transfer strategy is very, very strong. We prefer to sign players for the longer term rather than the shorter term, and we prefer to sign players that we have looked at for a longer period of time. Ivan Toney, I would say, is in that bracket of players that we have looked at for a longer period of time. 80 million, January. What do you think?
can you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
Awesome. So I really like Ivan Toney mainly because of how like Raya usually hits the ball to him at Brentford and usually wins every like second ball
Yeah.
and every long ball in the air. So that is one reason that I really love um Ivan Toney. I feel like it gives us something different, like what I've been saying. Like if you put in across Ivan Toney, is there like a poacher. I know Nkete can do the poaching stuff. I think Tony would be better in terms of that. The rebounds, just wait. Like the goal he scored against us, the offside goal he scored against us last season,
Yeah.
he's very good, like being in those sort of positions. Um, like if I have Ivan Tony and Jesus in the team, who would I start? I'd still start Jesus. You know why? Jesus gives us a lot in terms of coming back to midfield combination play. Tony could be that. He could help. He could learn that in terms of combining Martinelli and Saka and all that. That would be good. If there's a way to fit both of them in the team, that is absolutely fine. But what I don't agree is people usually say like Ivan Tony is like 10 times better than Jesus. That's not true. Like people say Ivan Tony can score 20 goals in the Premier League. That is true, but if we compare, you know how many penalties Ivan Toney scores in a season? He scores like 8, 9 penalties in a
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
So
I
if
mean, last season he converted many penalties.
many,
Of the 20 goals he scored, I think a minimum of six penalties.
so if Jesus was taking Arsenal penalties as well, we'd have been talking 17, 18 goals as
Yeah.
well. So there's that. So if you compare in terms of number of goals, remember that Tony scores a couple of free kicks. I think he scored like 2 free kicks last season and like 6, 7 penalties, and he always takes them. Even if he misses, he takes the next one. So
Yeah,
there's that. So in terms of goals, I don't think it's fair comparing like Jesus scores this and Tony scores this. Tony takes a lot of penalties for Brentford, and Jesus doesn't take penalties for Arsenal. So
mm,
there's that. But in terms of overall play, I think Tony will bring something different that we don't have. We have that
yeah,
combination play, and a player who gets into a lot of ground duels like Jesus. He can play on the right side, can play on the left side, can play as a striker. That is good. And Nketiah, as we say, is not the best finisher, but he will work for you. Like I watched Nketiah against Brentford in the Carabao Cup, and this last game against Man City, he runs a lot. Like you never see him. I don't think you can ever say Nketiah is lazy. I saw someone the other day in a comment section saying Nketiah is lazy. And I was like, nah, there's
yeah,
no
uh,
chance.
uh,
Like he
yeah.
runs a
That is
lot.
slander. That is
He
slander.
ran, yeah, he runs a lot. So that is one thing that Nketiah is 100% good at. But Tony would bring something that we don't have. He'd add the Premier League experience. He's now played there for 3 years. Number two, the aerial duels. So you will win a lot of them. So if you have like Evan Tony and Havas on the pitch at the same time, you can win a lot of headers in the
Yeah,
final third,
yeah.
crosses. Maybe with Evan Tony, we might win a lot of trophies because we'll never miss penalties. Having Evan Tony and Jorginho in the
So
team,
you just
we'll never
you
miss.
give him either the first penalty or the last one.
Yeah, and the last one. And then you have Jorginho and Odegaard there. You're never going to miss any penalties. So
Yeah,
there's that as well. But I think it brings something different, like the physicality in the box, the poacher, the aerial duel. So I definitely take him. And it looks like he wants to play for Arsenal. I like players who want to play for Arsenal. So I would definitely take him.
yeah. I mean, there's a conversation to be had with Ivan Tony whether he's a risk. You know, if you signed Andy Carroll, if you looked at the signing of Andy Carroll by Liverpool, I would say signing a player like Ole Watkins, signing a player like Ivan Tony could be in that basket, right?
Hmm.
uh, they've done well in the championship. They've done well at Brentford and all these small sides, but the level of competitiveness and the demands and the pressure is very very different. And for you to perform at a club like Arsenal, it takes it takes a special character. It takes a very very special personality. So do you think it's kind of very very risky, especially the 80 million they're asking for? Do you think it could come at Arsenal and genuinely become a flop? Again, our system could actually not not be better for him. We'll have to change our system to suit his demands. So do you think it's more like a risk as compared to if you went and signed probably if you signed him for around 50, 60?
I think you would hit the ground running because of that experience. The worry is, as you said, the way we play.
Yeah,
The way Arsenal play, that's the problem with bringing players like Osimhen. Yes, it would be good having a player like Osimhen scoring 100 goals in a season, but the way we play, especially rotation, Odegaard is on the right side. Sometimes he's the number 8. Sometimes he's the
yeah,
10.
yeah, yeah,
Jesus
yeah.
is on the right. Sometimes it's Nketiah on the left. Sometimes Martinelli is on the left. Sometimes the center forward. Will Osman do that for you? Can we ask him, okay, go on the left for 5 minutes and then go on the right for 10 minutes? I'm not sure about that. So, in terms of changing the system, that would be a problem. But I think coming to Arsenal, you have to. I don't think I don't know if it'd be a starter right away because that means dropping Jesus. As I said, Jesus is a
Yeah.
starter for me. I've never dropped him to the bench. It depends. For 80 million, I think is worth that price. If you're talking 110, 120, that is too
Yeah, that yeah, yeah,
much.
that's
But
yeah,
80,
that's totally more.
70, I
Yeah.
think that would be good. The only worry for now is fitness. Yes, I think it's training. I think it's training right now, but in terms of match fitness, that is my only worry because he'll have gone like 6 months, 7 months, 8 months without playing. So I don't know if he's going to hit the ground running right away. You compared players like Watkins, I'd very quickly take. If he gave me the chance to take Watkins, I'd take him so quickly. Like
Mm,
the
mm.
pacing behind and all that and the finishing, very good. And before I went off, I was just talking about McGinn. I'd mentioned McGinn. If you give me a midfielder like McGinn, I'd take him. So the only worry about Tony is the fitness because he's not played for like 8 months and we'll need him right away. That
Yeah,
would
true.
be my only worry.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it could come in as a risk. Look, just slightly to answer Ronnie's comment. Can you compare for me Tony and Balogun? Well, I think. Look, listen. It's a comparison that we shouldn't have at the moment, but just for you, I think Florian Balogun is Victor Osimhen type, And I think Ivan Tony is more like, I would even say he's in the Erling Haaland type. Because with Balogun, you have players, you have him as a player that doesn't want to hold the ball. I mean, his hold up play is not something you can rely on, but he's going to make those runs for you, and you have to find him. You absolutely have to find him, because he's a penalty runner. He's a penalty entry runner. And I think he's the opposite of Edin Ketia. He's the opposite of Ivan Toney. He doesn't have that, hold up. That is not what he does. What he literally does is he will give himself space as a center forward in the penalty area always. If you've seen it with Victor Osimhen, much of the time, what he does as a striker is he gives himself space, in the penalty area. He gives himself space, as a striker against defenders, and you can easily find him in space. Who is the better striker for me in terms of type? I think Tony scores all kinds of goals. Like, to be honest, he doesn't run a lot, so probably wouldn't score for you a counter attack. Balogun would score for you a counter attack, in my opinion. But I would still take Ivan Tony. I think he scores more types of goals as compared to Florian Balogun. But also, Balogun is still a little bit younger, and his career is going to be shaped by many managers. It's going to be shaped by a couple of factors. He might run into a Diego Simeone, who will turn him into a different striker. He might, run into Zidane. He will turn him to a different striker. He might run into Xavi. He might turn him into a Robert Lewandowski, and a couple of things, right? So for me personally, I would say Balogun is kind of different in a way that you're looking at Osimhen, right? You're looking at the Osimhen type. And with Ivan Toney, his hold up play, physicality, he's more like Mitrovic. He's more, that is the type of striker. More like Mitrovic. He'll score for you a header, score for you a penalty. His right foot, left foot as well, and his hold up is very good. Mikel Antonio as well. They're in the same bracket. They're in the same bucket, right? Probably Erling Haaland is a gem kind of, but if you wanted to harmonize it down and bring it down, that's what I would say. Okay, Augustine says get Osimhen and win the league. Does he win us the league? It's a huge question. Does he win us the league? Probably. Big up to you, Glenn, for being on the show. Love you, bro. Thank you so much. Isaac says I would like Ateta to surprise you, right, with the transfer of Pedro Neto in January. Surprise you. I mean, do we need a right player, a right attacker? We absolutely do. There's no question about that. I'll be surprised if Arsenal literally did not think about a right sided attacker. Even if we don't sign one, we've got to think about one. I think we will end the show at that. Glenn, Pedro Neto, loved by Arsenal fans. He's electric, has had a very good start to the campaign. Just in a minute, do you think it would be again another genius of a transfer window?
As I said, the only worry about Neto is injuries. He's picked
Yeah,
up like 2 or 3 big injuries the last 2 years. I've watched him the last few games for Wolves. I think it was Joe Gomez. Is it Joe Gomez? He ripped
yeah,
apart Gomez when they played Liverpool. That first half, he ripped him apart. Even the other day when they played Man City and they beat Man City, I think he
yeah,
ripped apart Nathan Ake.
yeah.
Like, he's very good. He's very quick. Like,
And
when he's
again,
on
I
the
think it
pitch.
was against Aston Villa as well in the last game.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Electric
And he played on the left side against Liverpool for a few minutes, and he played on the right side
on the
against
right
Man
side. Yeah,
City. So he can play in a couple of positions as well. So I do love Pedro Neto. It depends on the price, I guess. If you tell me 60 million, I'd be like, those injuries are too much. Like if it's something like a Trossard, 20 million, 25 million bargain,
yeah,
you get him right away. So I would take him, but it depends. But that for me, I still feel like if you get another kind of player like a Declan Rice, you win the league more
yeah.
than if you get another winger, if you get another striker, if you get another player like Declan Rice there, and you just don't concede goals. If you get 1 or 2 goals on the other side, which we can, we have Saka, we have Martinelli, we have Jesus, I still be confident.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for watching the show. It is me, Cossy, and Glenn right on the Total Access Show. We've been live for almost an hour and 7 minutes. Of course, we've discussed a couple of things. Jurrien Timber is set to be back as early as January, and Arsenal could have him in the later parts of the Champions League if those stories are actually to be believed. Of course, we talked about the injury crisis and the impact and how to mitigate it. We've got to rotate. There's no question about that. We've talked about whether Arsenal are really big title champions and and contenders. Are we favorites? All those topics are in the show. If you've missed the earlier part, make sure you do watch it. You've been very good watchers, very good listeners as well. We'll speak to you right in the next one. For now, we are going to say have a blessed evening. See you right in the morning.